continue in this maamar, Gimel. It's a slightly new section, so let's just move on. It's on page Yud Beis, on the left, towards the bottom. Alter Rebbe now explains the question that he's been dealing with about Matzah on Pesach. At the beginning of the maamar, Alter Rebbe asked why it is that we have a mitzvah to eat matzah for the week, and it says in the Haggadah the reason is because the matzah didn't have time to rise when they left Mitzrayim, but they were already told to eat matzah before they left Mitzrayim. On the night of Yetzias Mitzrayim, they were given a mitzvah to eat matzah. So how can we say that the reason why we eat matzah is because they didn't have time to let the bread rise when they were leaving? They ate matzah already before they left. They were told to eat matzah.
Things, wasn't it?
So what was two separate things?
So wasn't there a mitzvah to eat matzah, and then it also so happened that the bread didn't rise, so they ended up eating it for the rest of the week or whatever it was.
Right. And so, but why are we eating matzah?
That's a good question.
Are we eating matzah just because it happened to be that the bread didn't rise? Then why are we eating it on the night of Pesach? On that night, they ate it when they were in Mitzrayim, before they left. So it's all a bit confusing. So the Alter Rebbe explained an idea that matzah represents Abba, Chachma, Bittul, and they had a mitzvah. They only had a mitzvah to eat matzah on the first night of Pesach. They didn't need a full week of matzah and no chametz, because they had Moshe and Aaron with them, and Moshe and Aaron were personifications of Bittul, of Chachma. So they only needed to eat matzah one night, whereas we, who don't have that luxury, we have to eat matzah for the entire week. Now the Alter Rebbe explains the difference between the two matzahs, the matzahs of the night of Pesach and then the matzah of the rest of the week. That's in Gimel. It comes out that there's actually two distinct matzahs, two types of matzah. Matzah shalayla rishon, choiva. There's the matzah of the first night of Pesach, which is an obligation to eat. But matzah shal kol yimei Pesach, and then there's the matzah of the rest of Pesach, which is not an obligation to eat matzah. You can't eat chametz, but you don't have to eat matzah. And it's the second type of matzah, the matzah of the rest of the week of Pesach. It's that it says that it didn't have time to rise. Because for our forefathers, they didn't actually need to have matzah for the rest of the week of Pesach. They only ate matzah because the bread didn't have time to rise. So there is two distinct matzahs. There's the matzah that they were obligated to eat on the night of Pesach, which has nothing to do with the bread rising. And then there's the matzah they ate for the rest of the week, which was simply because the bread did not have time to rise.
Is that you write it differently as well? One with the wok, one without the wok?
Yeah. But so now the Alter Rebbe explains what was going on there. The difference between the matzah we eat and the matzah they eat after the first night was that the matzah they had automatically didn't rise. It didn't not rise because they were careful to not let it rise like we. For them, it happened automatically. The matzah was unable to rise. But why was the matzah unable to rise? Why couldn't it rise? Why was there no time? What stopped it rising?
Well, the simple answer was that they were in a hurry and they didn't have time to let it rise and pat it down and whatever, but there's obviously a much deeper...
But what do you have to do to let it rise?
You have to put the yeast in it.
Even without yeast, if you mix water and flour,
just rise.
then it ferments on its own, like it happens. You don't have to do anything. So what did they not do to make it? Why didn't it rise?
They were outside in the sun, like it should have risen.
Oh, yeah.
So I don't know why.
So,
Because it's
what about the sun?
Because it's warm.
The sun baked it. It baked in the sun.
Oh.
That once dough starts baking, it doesn't rise. The rising has to happen before the baking. So instead of leaving the...
Rises anyway. Rises during. Yeah.
First rice.
Well, it depends how long you bake it for. If the whole thing is completely baked, if it's baked to a crisp, or completely fully baked within a few minutes, it takes 18 minutes from when the water hits the flour. It takes 18 minutes for it to start fermenting. If within that 18 minutes it becomes fully baked, there's no fermenting anymore. So what happened? The practical story is that they made the flour, they had it on their shoulders as they were traveling, they had to leave, they couldn't just leave it in the shade to ferment, they had to leave. And when you're walking in the desert, in the heat of the desert, the sun bakes the matzahs. And it baked it to the point where it didn't rise. So it ended up matzah, not bread. That's the story al pi pashtus, on a simplistic level. But Alter Rebbe says actually there was a much deeper thing going on here. I mean, hopefully. We hope so. So, the Alter Rebbe explains.
But if you left like matzah in the sun, is it possible for it to bake?
In the Sahara Desert, maybe, yeah.
At 45 or 50 degrees.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah. Very thin matzah.
But didn't they have the cloud already? They didn't have the cloud already to keep them shade?
This was still in Mitzrayim. I don't think the cloud...
No, after they left.
The cloud was already...
that's
I think that was after
After Yom Sov.
Yom
After
Sov,
Yom
yeah.
Sov,
Yeah, well, up in Sofia.
But then at Yom Sov already they had the cloud.
I think, because it stopped the arrows going through.
The fire and the...
Or at least at one madroga of it.
I don't know. The fourth line on Gimel. Ach zeh haya etzlam memela. The fact that the matzah did not rise and become bread, become chametz, that was something that happened on its own. Shenigla ele melech malchei hamlachim. It was because Hashem revealed Himself to them that the matzah couldn't rise. If you look at the words of the Haggadah, it says lo hispik betzekom or betzekas lahachmitz ad shenigla le melech malchei hamlachim hakadosh baruch hu u'ga'ala. That the matzah the bread or the dough did not have time to rise until Hashem, the King of Kings, revealed Himself to them. So, simple pshat is that Hashem, what does that mean? Hashem revealed Himself to them. He told them to leave, and so they didn't have time for the bread. The Alter Rebbe is saying, no. It's explaining to you why the matzah didn't rise. Hashem revealed Himself to them, and that revelation prevented the matzah from rising. How so? How does that divine revelation interfere with your dough? What does that mean? So, first the Alter Rebbe gives a very interesting explanation of the name Melech Malchei Hamlachim, which we use often in our davening and in our Haggadah. Melech Malchei Hamlachim. What does it translate as? Melech Malchei Hamlachim. What does it mean?
The king of all the kings.
The king of kings of kings. Melech Malchei Hamlachim. So Malchei Hamlachim is the kings of kings. Melech Malchei Hamlachim is the king of kings of kings. There's an extra king there, at least one extra king in that phrase. What does it mean? So the Alter Rebbe explains, the fact that Hashem is called the King of Kings of Kings, kipshutai, the simple explanation of it is, so the last word, malachim, is referring to the kings in this world, the kings of the various nations. The kings of the kings, that is referring to the angels that are in charge, the ministering angels of each nation. That above each nation there's a physical king, a human being. Above that king there is an angel who is the king, the spiritual king of that nation, who determines the fate of that nation. Like Daniel refers to in the prophet Daniel, the Sar Malchus Paras, that there's a Sar, there's a ministering angel over the kingdom of Persia, that's a spiritual king. And Hashem is the king over the kings of the kings. So a nation has a king, human king who leads that nation. Above him there is a Sar, there's an angel who directs the king. But above him there's Hashem, who directs all the kings of the kings. It says this is the reason why there's a mitzvah to give honor to a king, any king. including a non-Jewish king. And there's even a bracha you have to make when you see a king of nations of the world. And many people say that this also applies to other heads of state that have power of life and death in their hands, presidents and prime ministers. So one of the reasons why we have to give them honor is because for whatever reason that person was zoicha to be in a position where they have a direct influence from this Sa'ar Melamayla, this angelic being who's the minister of that nation. And so the decisions and the thoughts and ideas and the policies that that person makes are directed by the Sa'ar Melamayla. And for a human being to have that connection is a big thing, so therefore have to be honored.
I was just going to say,
What are you saying? Even if they're evil, what? Do we make a bracha if they're even if they're evil?
Like the dictators.
Think so?
They're not kings. They are. Do they have also a star?
Yeah, there are evils. There are evil stars. The Sar Shel Esav wrestled with Yaakov. They're not all.
So even the prime ministers?
Yeah. I don't know if you make a bracha when you see prime minister, but there is an idea that the person who's ruling the nation is directed by the Sar Melamayla, which is one of the reasons why in the election campaign they promise things, but they don't keep it when they're voted in. Because until they're voted in, they're not under the control of the Sar. But once they're voted in, so then it's not up to them. There's a Sar Melamayla that directs them.
Said it was the minister.
They can't help it.
In our house we... my husband's going to love that one.
That what is predestined for that leader's nation at this time is what would you call hidden good? Or does that mean that he's perverting his power? And
no, they still have a free choice. Every person has free choice as far as good and evil is concerned, and so there is still an element of evil. But it could be that the nation has corrupted the Sar Melamayla, or the Sar Melamayla has corrupted it. It could go both ways. It's not just a simplistic thing that there's an angelic thing that determines down here. People also determine their fate.
And does it work with Yiddish rulers as well?
No, because we don't have a Sar Melamayla. We don't have an angel. We're directly connected to Hashem. So why they don't keep the promises, I don't know.
Yeah, I was just wondering, like the Israeli Prime Minister, he also changed his mind the second he gets in.
But always
that's his fault.
The Navi spoke to the king, not directly. They weren't speaking to Hashem directly. So the Navi was not between the Hashem and the king.
Yeah, that's to send messages. That's not the Navi. The Navi didn't determine matters of state. The king would defer to the Navi. It was a division of power. So Melech Malcham Lachim. So now at least we understand what that means. The king of the kings of kings. That there's the kings of the kings, which is the Sarim Melamayla, and then there's Hashem, who's the king over those kings of the kings. That's the simple pshat of Melech Malcham Lachim. But Va'od Nikra Melech Malcham Lachim. There's another reason. B'chinas Malchusay V'anogasei Olamas Aldei Eses Sfiros. It's also Melech Malcham Lachim is also referring to the way Hashem directs the world through the 10 spheres. How so? Hamalachim Hem Nehi. The kings here are referring to Netzach Yesod, those 3 spheres. Malchei, the kings of those kings, are Chesed Gvur Tiferes, because Chesed Gvur Tiferes are direct Netzach Yesod respectively. So therefore they're the Malchei Malachim. Well, Melech Malchei, and the king of the kings, Hainu Chabad, that's Chacham bin Adas. Ki ba'olam asiyah me'irim b'chines nehi, ba'olam yitzirah me'ir chagas, ba'olam nabriya bina, ach batzilus me'ir b'chines chachma. Because in the world of asiyah, the physical world, the attributes of Netzach Yesod shine, are dominant. In the world of Yitzirah Bavas, Chesed Gvur Tiferes are dominant. In the world of Bria is Bina, and in the world of Atzilus is Chachma. So Melech Malcham Lachim is referring to Chachma bin Adas, which is king over Chesed Gvur Tiferes, which is king over Netzach Yesod, which then is expressed through Malchus. So another.
Applying the Melech Malcham Lachim concept to the spheres.
Yeah, it's a higher explanation of the term. There's Melech Malcham Lachim over the Malachim, the physical kings and the angels, and Hashem above them. On a higher level, it's that Hashem, through the 10 spheres, controls and directs the world. So in Chachma, that's where Hashem is revealed, because Chachma is Bittul. In Bittul, there's room for Hashem's revelation. So the Melech of the Malchei HaMalachim is the Ernst that rests in Chachma. skip a line, fourth last line of the page, in the middle. V'gilui chachma hu gilui Abba, shenigla b'chidas gilui. That, so a revelation of chachma is a revelation of the Abba, which we described earlier in the maamar. Abba is chachma. A revelation of the Melech Malchei Hamlochim. That's what it says, that who was revealed in Mitzrayim? The Melech Malchei Hamlochim. What is that saying? That chachma, who is the king over the kings of kings, chachma that is over Chagas and Nehi. That's what was revealed. And that's why the dough could not rise. Because the level of chachma was revealed, the level of total bittul, which we described earlier as what generally on Yom Tov happens, specifically on Pesach happens through the matzah. So because the level of chachma was revealed, so the matzah couldn't rise, the dough couldn't rise. Why not? Why couldn't it rise? Because what does rising mean? Having yeshus. Chametz is yeshus. So when there's a gilui of the Melech Malchei Hamlochim, the level of chachma, which is bittul, so that there can't be chametz. There can't be room for the yanika of chitzonim of the powers of evil.
So does that happen on Pesach too?
Yeah. But we have to be careful the chametz doesn't become chametz. But yeah, the same gilui happens. So the Alter Rebbe shows what this means in avoda. What does it mean that matzah doesn't rise when there's a revelation of chachma? What does it mean to us in our avoda? Look at the second last line. Yires es Hashem b'ni u'melech. There's a pasuk in Mishlei that says, "Fear Hashem, my son, and the king." Bit of a difficult syntax there. Fear Hashem, my son, and the king. So what does that mean? The simple explanation of this pasuk, just like you need to engender within yourself Yirah Shamayim, a fear of Hashem, even though you don't see him, but you have to still engender that fear. Bimzeh tifrosh min avera, and that's how you can avoid sin. Over the page 24. How do you avoid sin? What stops you from sinning when no one's looking? Why not sin? Why not do the wrong thing? Because Hashem's looking. And even though you don't see Hashem looking at you, if there'd be a person looking at you, you probably wouldn't do the wrong thing. But Hashem looking at you, you don't see him. So you have to build within yourself Yirah Shamayim. Yirah Shamayim means a sense of doing the right thing because Hashem is watching at all times. Even though you don't see him, he's there. So the way you stop yourself from doing the wrong thing is through engendering a Yirah Shamayim. So too, says Shlomo Melech, you need to also develop a fear of the king, the human king, that it rules over the land. But you should imagine his face in front of you. Even though he's not in front of you, you don't see him, but you should imagine him there. And from that, by doing that, you will avoid getting the death penalty for rebelling against the king. In other words, just like a person has to engender Yirah Shamayim from Hashem, even though we don't see Hashem, so too we need fear of Basav Adam as well. We have to have fear of the king, even though he's not seeing you, he's not watching what you're doing. And that way you'll be a loyal citizen. This explanation of the pasuk is found in a sefer called Kada Kemach, written by Rabbeinu Bachaya. It's a Musa sefer, one of the classic Musa Sfarim from the Rishonim. But there's another way of explaining this pasuk. When it says that you should fear Hashem and the king, there's another way to translate that. There's a saying the sages say about this pasuk. There's a chazal on it that says, you could reread it, Yireh Hashem b'ni u'maloich. Fear Hashem and be a king.
That sounds better.
Which means u'maloich al yitzracha. That means that you will be king over your yetzer. Through having Yirah Shamayim, you become the ruler. You become the king over your Yetzer Hara, rather than the other way around, the Yetzer Hara controlling you. So says Alter Rebbe, Shnei Pirushim Emes. Really, both are true. Both explanations are true. Fear Hashem and fear the king, or have fear of Hashem and you'll be a king. They're both true. Through having real Yirah Shamayim, which was the first explanation, through having Hashem as a reality, that He's really there and really watching you, and it really does matter what you do, having a sense of Yirah Shamayim, a fear of Melech Malcham Lachim. That's the path to conquer your own Yetzer Hara. Because you can't really be drawn after material and physical desires that lead to immorality and selfishness and indulgence. You can't really be into that if you have a sense of Yirah Shamayim. If you have a sense of Hashem in front of you, so you can't just go running after petty, folly, empty things. So through drawing down the presence of Hashem, a sense of Yirah Shamayim, that will bring bittul. That will bring a bittul to Hashem's will, and you'll be king of your Yetzer Hara. V'Yetzer Hara hu chametz. Now, the Yetzer Hara is what chametz is. Chametz represents the Yetzer Hara. So now we understand. Through a revelation of the Melech Malchei Hamlachim, it wasn't possible for the bread to rise. The Yetzer Hara cannot have a footing, cannot have any control where there's a revelation, there's a Gilui Elokus. The Yetzer Hara can only have a say when you feel you're outside of the eye of Hashem, that you're not in Hashem's presence. If you're not in Hashem's presence, the Yetzer Hara can tempt you and you can fall. If you feel that if there's a Gilui Elokus, there's a revelation, there's a divine revelation in front of you where you feel a sense of closeness, of immediacy of Hashem, then the Yetzer Hara doesn't have any stance, doesn't have any control, no power. So that's what happened back then. But by us, we don't just have the automatic appearance of matzah because of the revelation. We have a full 7 days where we have to eat matzah. Shem Zayin Amidus, which the 7 days represent the 7 emotional faculties. Shebehem yesh little Yetzer Hara, because we do have the Yetzer Hara problem. The Yetzer Hara does have a hold over our midas, our emotions, where we love the wrong thing, we're in awe of things that we shouldn't be. Our emotions are under the sway of the Yetzer Hara. Because the Shviras HaKelim affected the 7 lower midas, which is another subject, and so our emotions are under the sway, the control, the influence of the Yetzer Hara. We have to work on drawing bittul into our midas, drawing a sense of bittul of Yirah Shamayim into our emotions. It doesn't happen automatically. For them, it was a revelation that happened passively for them. They were sitting in Mitzrayim, Memta Shari Tumah, and suddenly there was a Nigla Melech Malcham Lachim. There was a revelation of Chachma Abba, of Abba. We have to draw down this. We have to draw it into our midas, into the 7 days of Pesach, into the 7 midas.
So each represents 1 midah?
Yeah. So it said earlier in the mind, that's why the chiyuv is to eat matzah on the first day. Technically, you don't have to eat matzah for the rest of the week, as long as you don't do chametz. So earlier in the mind it said, because the first day is chesed, and chesed is the yomid the ozlim kumul yomin. Chesed is an all-permeating midah. The entire system of the 7 midas are all permeated with the chesed. Why? Because chesed is revelation. So all 7 midas to be, there needs to be chesed. It's underlying all.
The first day is chesed.
Yeah.
But then, like when we start counting Sphira, is that the second day?
It's a different system. The Sfiras Omer is a slightly different system. He's just talking about Pesach, 7 days of Pesach. Okay, so what we've come out with is that there's 2 types of matzah. There's the matzah of the first night of Pesach, and there's the matzah of the rest of the week of Pesach. The first night of Pesach is the matzah that is similar to the matzah they had then, that is not chametz because it can't be chametz, because there's a revelation that comes down on the first night of Pesach. But then for the rest of the week of Pesach, even the first day onwards, then there's a specific mitzvah we have, they didn't have, to continue eating matzah, to draw down the bittul into the Zayin Midas, into the Midas. So now the Alter Rebbe continues. Val bechina rishona, we're on the line that starts bechinas matzah or bittul. It's about 12 or so lines from the top. Val bechina rishona nemar, about the first type of matzah that we spoke about, the matzah that's not chametz because of the revelation. It says about that bavur zeh asa havai li, that because of this Hashem did for me when I left Mitzrayim. It's another one of those psukim that's very difficult to understand on a simple level. It's mentioned in the Haggadah. Bavur zeh, because of this Hashem did for me when I left Egypt. And we say that Bavur zeh b'shosh yesh matzah, that Bavur zeh, because of this, the Haggadah quotes from the Mishnah, that means that you have to say this when the matzah and the maror is in front of you. Because of this Hashem took me out of Mitzrayim. What does that mean? Because of this, Hashem did for me when I left Egypt. Does that make any sense? What? I'm eating this because Hashem took me out of it.
Yeah, we only had matzah after we came out of Mitzrayim.
It depends on what this refers to. Doesn't it refer to the revelation? It's like a revelation of the comparison as well.
On a simple level, it's talking about matzah and maror. You've got matzah and maror in front of you, so you can say, because of this, Hashem took me out of Mitzrayim. I mean, one pshat is that it's saying the opposite of what you think. You think that eating matzah and maror because you left Egypt. Hashem took you out of Egypt so you could eat matzah and maror. The whole point of Yetzias Mitzrayim was mitzvahs. So it's not that we do mitzvahs because Hashem took it out of Mitzrayim. It's Hashem took us out of Mitzrayim so we could do mitzvahs. This is what it's all for. So we think we're doing a Seder to commemorate the Yetzias Mitzrayim. No, the Seder is a bunch of mitzvahs. That's the whole point of taking us out of Mitzrayim, to do mitzvahs. So Bavur zeh, because of this, Hashem took us out of Mitzrayim.
But He gave us mitzvah before we left. 2 mitzvahs, Korban Pesach and...
Right.
So
all
He already gave us the mitzvah before even taking us out.
Yeah. So now the Alter Rebbe gives a deeper explanation. What's this bavur zeh? What's it? Because of this Hashem took it. Shebavur hamshachas matzah osavaya hu gili abba. That in order to draw down this hamshacha of matzah, that's why osavaya, that's why Hashem made a revelation, which is the gilu abba. Pirush. Dahainu inyan osavaya li. What does it mean Hashem did for me? That Hashem did for me means that for me, you know who I am? I'm a lowly being of this world, a physical being in Memta Shari Tumah. And Asa Havaya Li, Hashem made himself for me. Asa Havaya, He made an Havaya for me. He drew down a revelation, a Gilui Elikus, all the way down for me, down here in this world, in this universe. So, Asa Havaya Li means a revelation for me in Asiyah Gashmis, in this physical world. How's it possible for there to be such an awesome revelation, a revelation of Abba Chachma, the highest level, for me, the little shmo down here in Mitzrayim, in a physical world? How's that possible? Zeu yefsher, rak bavur zeh. That's impossible. It can't be. You can't have such a revelation if it weren't for bavur zeh. Dahainu, mashalidei hamatzah nimshich moichin da abba. That because matzah draws down a revelation of moichin da abba, of chachma, shachachma ma'ayin to matzah, shila ma'ila meseder shtalshus, and because chachma is coming from nothingness, from bittul, from a level that's higher than ishtalshalus, to the point where that's the level where darkness and light are equal, and big and little and all levels are all the same because it's above ishtalshalus. That's why it's possible for the revelation to reach me down here in the physical world. Again. Yes. The pasuk says, "Bavur zeh asa havaya li b'tzeisim Mitzrayim." That because of this, Hashem did for me when I went out of Mitzrayim. This pasuk is trying to answer a question. The Yetzias Mitzrayim, what was the Yetzias Mitzrayim? How did we leave Mitzrayim? What was the mechanism? What was the function? What was the strategy to get us out of Mitzrayim? We were slaves in Egypt. To leave, what happened? What got us free? What was the intervention?
Marcus and whatever, and basically knocking out Zion, and then we got the mitzvahs, we got the orders, marching orders.
Right. So correct. There's a whole process of miracles, shaking up Egypt, punishing them, that eventually got us free. So at what point were we free from Mitzrayim? When were we free from Mitzrayim? What was the point where we were free people?
After the Korban Pesach, after the Korban Pesach.
I think when the Mitzrayim drowned. That's it.
Right.
They were finished. Honestly, I think it was probably a gradual process until Matzah.
I was going to say
maybe it's still happening too.
Yeah.
Okay, so there are many possible points where you could say it. For the last 6 months before they left Mitzrayim, they weren't slaves. Do you know that? They didn't all not work. They were not working for 6 months.
What stopped that?
From the
Yeah.
It was only 6?
6 months from Rosh Hashanah. From Rosh Hashanah that year. They were not
The
working
Makkahs
anymore.
took a year, right?
Yes, it wasn't from,
So
wasn't the whole Makkah's time.
So when did it change?
No, there was
So when did they stop working?
from I don't know why it's Rosh Hashanah, but from Rosh Hashanah. That's what it says. From Rosh Hashanah that year, 6 months before Pesach, they stopped work. There was no shibud anymore, but they were still in Mitzrayim. Then they left Mitzrayim at the night of Makkah's Bechoros. They were free to go, but they left in the morning. But then it wasn't until Kriyas Yamsuf that they were actually free of Mitzrayim. But they were still in a state of impurity until Matan Torah. So there are many different things you can say. But so if you look at it on a sort of just a political level, when did they leave Mitzrayim? It was a process of leaving and getting free. But on a ruchnistic level, there was a moment where they were free. The Gilui Lakus that happened on the night of Yetzias Mitzrayim, that freed the Nefesh Elokis from its connection to Mitzrayim. That's what actually happened. It's nothing to do with Paro. We're not talking about Paro. We're not talking about Mitzrayim. We're talking about the Tumah of Mitzrayim that encaptured the soul of the Jewish people. They were stuck in Mitzrayim. That was what the slavery was, and that was released at the Gilui, with the Gilui Lakus that happened on the night of the Seder, the first Seder night. When Hashem revealed Himself, they were free, and that's what it means that the matzah didn't the matzah didn't rise. The Gilui Lakus was so intense that the matzah couldn't rise. There was no room for chametz, for Yetzer Hara, which is Mitzrayim.
That's why they had to eat it fast as well. Does that to do anything to do with that?
Eat it fast?
Yeah. Because they had to dress up and eat it as I thought they had to eat it.
So the reason why it had to be fast, the reason why they had to do everything quick, was because that moment of freedom was a very sensitive one, a volatile moment. They could easily fall back because the change came milamayla lamata. It was a revelation from above. But they themselves were still quite happy to be in Mitzrayim. They weren't ready to leave. And they could have fallen back. As we see constantly throughout the desert, they keep saying, let's go back to Mitzrayim. The freedom was not one that they actually earned. It was imposed upon them from above. So it was a volatile one. It wasn't something they could depend upon. But that was the moment of freedom. The freedom happened as a result of the Gilui Lakus, which means, it could happen to us. It could happen to anybody. If you have a revelation of a Lakus, so then you're free from your Yetzer Hara. Like you're not in the
control our freedom. If we connect to Hashem,
to a great extent, yes, to a great extent. But this is something that did happen in Lamaila. They called out for it. Their part in it was V'yizaku el Hashem. They called out to Hashem. They realized that we can't do it on our own. When they realized they can't do it on our own, that was when they were open to this Gilui, this revelation.
But it has to come from above.
Yeah.
So what do you mean?
So
what?
sorry?
I don't understand. Like, when you said Hashem is clearly, like...
What it means is, we don't understand it because we haven't really had this, we haven't had divine revelations all that often. But it's not just speaking to them. It's your neshama having a direct experience of the divine. Not something you read about or have faith in or believe in or heard about. Having a direct encounter with Hashem. That's what happened. And this part of the story is missed sometimes when we read Yetzias Mitzrayim as on a simplistic level. We sometimes miss the whole point that it's Nigla le Melech Malchem Lachim. It was that Hashem revealed Himself to them in Mitzrayim. This is the big event. This is the Pesach. What does Pesach mean? A jump. What was the jump? That Hashem, L'mayla Mishtalshalus, came into Ishtalshalus and revealed Himself in the lowest place in Mitzrayim to Yidden that were on Mem Teshar Tumah, the lowest level. That's the jump of Pesach. That's why Pesach is called a leap, a huge leap. It's an unbelievable jump. The Gilui that happened. There was a revelation of Hashem in Mitzrayim. That's the real event of Yetzias Mitzrayim. And by the way, that's also the real event of Kriyas Yamsuf. Kriyas Yamsuf was not just the idea that there's this water in the way, we've got to go there, and so the water got out of the way and we were able to walk through. There was a Gilui Lakus at Yamsuf. The hidden world became revealed. The water became dry land. Totally spiritual thing. Not that the water, it did happen really. They did walk through, but the idea wasn't, wow, look, the water's standing up. It was, we are seeing Hashem. It was like walking into a divine revelation. And by the way, Har Sinai is also that. that Har Sinai was not like Hashem talking to us, a message. It was a Gilui Lakus. Ata Hareis Ladas. You saw to know Hashem. That's what Har Sinai was. All these events are Gilui Lakus. And that's why these days are Yomim Tovim. These are days when Hashem revealed Himself and reveals. It happens every year again. There's another Gilui Lakus that happens.
You could do everything, like every single hitter of Matzah and everything, and not feel any sort of revelation and not experience anything.
Really? Even at Seder night, you don't feel a revelation?
No.
At first night. First night at all.
You haven't worked hard enough.
It's like if I'm
No, I think it's the other way around.
I will feel this feeling that I don't feel any other time. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
total
Yeah.
or...
But it happens at the Seder as well. I mean,
Feeling.
yeah, you could sometimes you might be too tired or whatever, but it's happening at the Seder. There's a Gilui Lakus.
Well, your Nefesh of the Kiss is experiencing it. It's just a matter if your body and Nefesh of the Hamas are doing enough to be conscious of the spillover of the Nefesh of the Kiss.
Right. But the whole power of Pesach is that it's a Pesach. It's a jump all the way down to you in your Nefesh Bahamas. That's the whole thing. Not that Nefesh Bahamas feels it. It's the Nefesh of the Kiss feels it only. We run away from the Nefesh Bahamas, but it's available. The Gilui Lakus is available.
If you know it's there, and even if you don't want to eat matzah and you're completely tired from everything you've done, that you can just know it's there and try to connect to it.
I don't feel...
I don't know.
Even singing the Haggadah, it's pleasant, but I don't feel like this awe of like spirituality.
Okay, and there are people who go to the coastal and don't feel it as well. But you can't. But after learning this maamar, it can't be the same. It can't be the same Seder.
I think it can be.
Can't be. It can't be. How can you approach the Seder the same way, knowing what's going on? You're missing. There are people who miss it. Like I said, at the coastal, there are people who go to the coastal and miss it too.
How's it possible?
Oh, I did it the first time.
You are?
I missed it the first time at the coastal. Absolutely. We
So,
just got
yeah.
off a flight from Australia and they put us on this bus and they put us there at 2 o'clock in the morning. I looked at it and went, it's a wall. You know?
Really?
Yeah, the first time. When I went back, it was completely different. But
Depends how much you prepare yourself
yeah.
for that delivery. I think so.
Yeah. And how open you are, and
And how tired you are.
yeah. There were Yidden in Mitzrayim who also refused to take part, and
But I don't think if it's such a giloi and it's coming from Hashem and it's coming to us, then by doing the motion there should be a bit more something that we experience.
Well, it depends. When you're saying going through the motions, if you're going through the motions, so the revelation will also just go through the motions. So there was a revelation. Right? So if you're just if there's no avoda involved in Pesach, avoda in the ruchnistic sense, so then why should there be a ruchnistic feeling? Like why, if all it is hard work in a physical sense, why should you feel the gilui? So you'll have a gilui, just like so you had a seder. It takes preparation.
But any time that any little miracle happened to us, we do feel that gilui. It doesn't have to be in a Yom Tov or you feel it that really Hashem was with you. I'm putting my daughter was nearly, she felt the car hitting her. She felt the air. And she said, Mom, I felt that Hashem with me. Hashem saved me. You feel it. You do feel it. Any small things, you see Hashem really good.
I guess if you're open.
And you need to look. You have to start by looking.
Yeah.
That's right. And so that's the same thing. You consider the Seder. At the beginning of the Seder we say, Kol dichven yesev v'yechol. Whoever's hungry, come and eat. Who are we talking to? Who are we inviting to the Seder? Sitting at the Seder already. Us. We're inviting you. Say, you're hungry, come and eat. Come and participate. It's all available here. The Seder has this unbelievable opportunity of Gilui Lukus, of a connection, of a revelation of Hashem. So come, you're hungry, come and eat. It's here.
We actually say that at our Seder table every year. We say, hang on a second, we've been sitting here for 45 minutes. Now we're saying Kol Dichvi, the doors are closed, we're all around the table.
You've missed Kiddush already.
This for if you're here and you're not comfortable and you're not part of
in
it.
Yeah. So how is it possible to have such a revelation? How can there be a Gilui Lukus of the highest order to Yidden in Mitzrayim in the lowest spiritual state? How can it be also Hashem Li B'Tzeis Mitzrayim? So the pasuk answers is because it's Matzah that's being revealed. What is Matzah? Matzah is Chachma. Chachma is the level that's higher than Ishtalshelus. If there's a revelation within Ishtalshelus, so then within Ishtalshelus there's a system. The system is that if you're holy, you can connect to holiness. If you're unholy, you're distant from holiness. Where there's a hierarchy, where there's a pecking order, where there's Ishtalshelus, so then there's higher and lower. And if you're at the bottom of the rung, you're very far from the top of the rung. So Elokus is up there, you're down here, there's a very big distance between. That's in the system of Ishtalshelus. But when there's a Gilui that's the Mailam Ishtalshelus, higher than Ishtalshelus, on that level there's no higher and lower, up and down, dark and light, it's all the same. So when that revelation comes, even down here, Asa Hashem Li, when I'm in Mitzrayim, I can have a revelation. So because it's this type of Gilui, it's a Gilui of Chachma, which is a Bav Ishtalshelus, that's why Asa Havai Li, that's why Hashem can reach me too.
Can I ask two questions? Number one, are we saying that Chachma is higher than Ishtalshelus?
Yeah.
Okay. So it's the beginning, it's called higher then.
Because Chachma Ma'ayin to Matzah comes from nowhere.
Okay.
And like I said, it says that if you look carefully in Tanya, Perek Yud Ches, it says there about that Chachma is, we call it Seichel, but it's really higher than Seichel. It's really higher than the system.
Okay, and the second Paskasha is, we're talking about all this Chachma with Nikolai Malcham. Didn't we keep saying that Yom Tov is Bina? Pesach is Yom Tov.
So we said earlier in the maamar, it said that what type of Bina is being revealed on Yom Tov? Bina that is Dovuk in Chachma. The advantage of Yom Tov is the Bina part of it means it connects to us more. It's much more down here. But what part of Bina? The Bina that takes a ha'ara of Chachma and draws down the ha'ara of Chachma. Mikroi Kodesh. Kodesh is Chachma, and Mikroi Kodesh means a Yom Tov that draws down Kodesh, brings Kodesh down through Bina to us.
So in a sense, the Gilui is the same level, just more accessible.
Well, it's only ha'ara, which is why it's more accessible. It's not etzem chachma, it's a ha'ara of chachma. So we're eating matzah, it's like something we can ingest.
But on Shavuot we eat chametz, so the chametz.
It's a different avodah, yeah. It mentions a bit later, but it's a different avodah.
So that's like a bina, kind of a more in a
It's-
bina.
That's taking the yesh and that's transforming the yesh, which you can only do later. That you can do later. When you're on the lower level of Mamta Shari Tumah, so then don't start to work on your personality. Your personality is the problem. You need bittul, you need to run away from it. Then later you can get back the chametz and work on it. That's a different thing. So let's just do another couple of lines. Dahainu. On the line of 15, 16 lines down, that starts Zehu. Zehu Yefsha. Dahainu. Mashal Yidei HaMatzah Nimshach Moichin Da'abo Shachach Meinte Matzah Shilam Mailam Seder Shtalshlus Ad Shesham Nemek Chajik Oira V'Shaveh Mashveh. That because on what we're drawing down is Moichin Da'abo through the Matzah, and Moichin Da'abo is Chachba, which is Ma'ayin to Matzah, comes from nothingness, from higher than Shtalshlus, where darkness and light are equal and big and little are all the same. That's why it's possible for the revelation to reach me down here in Gashmis. Like it says, we mentioned this in Agada. We say that the Hashem says that va'avarti be'eretz Mitzrayim ani, that I passed through Mitzrayim. Ani v'lo malach, me, not a malach, not a saraf, not an what is it? Shliach. Ani v'lo yacher. So Hashem emphasizes, and this is emphasized throughout the Haggadah, if you look carefully, it's me, myself, who came down to Mitzrayim. Not a shliach, not a malach, not a sarf. So what is it? What is Hashem negating there? It's negating biyah, bria, yitzira, and asiyah. Not a malach, not a sarf, not a shliach, means it wasn't through bria, yitzira, and asiyah. It's me, myself. And in fact, within Atzilus as well, there's Bria, Tzira, and Asiyah within Atzilus. You can divide each world into 4 worlds as well. That in Atzilus itself, Malchus is Asiyah, Chagas is Yitzira. Sorry, Chagas and Bina are Yitzira, and Bria of Atzilus. Sorry. That you can take the 4 worlds. Atzilus, Bria, Yitzira, Asiyah. So Hashem says that it was not Bri, Yitzir, Asiyah, it was Atzilus that was revealed. Ani, V'loi Malach, V'loi Sarah, V'loi Shliach. Not the 3 lower worlds. In fact, you can even say within Atzilus, there's also Atzilus, Bri, Yitzir, and Asiyah. Asiyah of Atzilus is Malchus of Atzilus. Yitzir of Atzilus is Chagas of Atzilus. Bri of Atzilus is Bina of Atzilus. So what's the Ani of Atzilus? It's Chachma. That was Chachma of Atzilus that was revealed. That's what Ani, V'loi Malach, V'loi Sarah, V'loi Shliach means. וזהו גם כן פירוש אני ולא מלך שהמלכוס נקרא גם כן המלך אלא אני דווקא שהוא על ידי המשוחס אבא מוקר חכמה שהוא אצילוס שבאצילוס. So what Hashem is emphasizing here is that it was Atzilus of Atzilus that came down to reveal itself in Mitzrayim. Chachma of Atzilus. Well, after the brackets, there's 3 lines brackets. The Vishar Eretz Mitzrayim Hayomakum Tuma. Why did Hashem have to reveal Himself? Why did it have such an awesome revelation? Because Mitzrayim is a place of Tuma. V'hutzrach dafka liyas hamshach el yoina. שגם חושך לא יחשיך, וכחשך כאורה, היינו אור אבא ולא אימו. So it had to be a revelation that darkness doesn't matter to, that darkness and light are all the same. Because Mitzrayim was such a lowly place, so the Hishtalshlus cannot allow a revelation in Mitzrayim. There's no light that can reach Mitzrayim. Mitzrayim is a place of darkness. So it has to be a light that's above Ishtalshus. The darkness doesn't matter in the first place because it's above darkness and light. And so that is Atzilus Shabbatzilus. That's it couldn't be any other. So if Hashem would have sent a Malach, so a Malach is a part of Ishtalshus that relates to the level according to what it can handle. Mitzrayim can't handle anything. There can't be a Gili in Mitzrayim. So that to be this jump, this Pesach, a jump from the highest level, Atzilus Shabbatzilus, all the way down to the lowest, which is Mitzrayim. That's Abba and not Ema. You couldn't be Bina. Bina is already a part of Ishtalshus. It relates to Ishtalshus. Abba is beyond. Anything, if it would have come through a Malach. Okay, a Malach is only a tool in the hand of Hashem. It all comes from Hashem. And so a tool in the hand doesn't do anything independent. It would have been Hashem's revelation. But if it would have come through a shliach, that is Hishtalshlus. That's the system. That through the light enclothing itself in a malach is one level. That malach then hands it over to a lower malach, and to another malach, and to another malach, until it reaches down here. That's Hishtalshlus. But when the revelation is from higher than Hishtalshlus, a malach can't help. It can't have a tool. It has to come directly from Hashem, because it can't be contained even by a malach. So it's superseding the entire system. Instead of the normal revelation that goes through malachim, and each level passes down to another, which is Hishtalshlus, that would be good when you're giving a revelation to a holy place. But when you want to reveal yourself in an unholy place, like Mitzrayim, so then it will get broken down. The message will not reach Mitzrayim. It has to override the entire system of Hishtalshlus. And so therefore it has to come from an even higher place, higher than Hishtalshlus. And that's why it's emphasized over and over again that it was me and not a malach. That me, myself, Hashem himself revealed himself in Mitzrayim. Okay.